Wel, Matthew Ba, Hula Dunio, agus Falcha Gu Committee and Chillan Skianach, agus Raasay. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Area Committee of the Isle of Skye and Raasay. As always, this meeting will be recorded and archived for public viewing through the Highland Council's YouTube page. And I'm sure by now we're all familiar with the online protocols. As always, just keep our cameras activated as long as we don't have any technical issues. And again, there's online support if anybody does have any technical issues. So yeah, we're always sent the protocols as to meetings online. Usually we have a roll call, Alistair, as the clerk today, but there's 4 of us just at our area committee and there's no apologies. So I think we're all present here. Yeah. So just going on to declarations of interest. Members have sent their declarations of interest to the clerk. To Alistair.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yes, members have declarations of interest from members in relation to item 5 on the agenda today. That's the Highland Coastal Communities Fund application. The declarations are from Councillor Calaray has declared a non-financial interest in the Kilmuir Community Hub application as Chair of Kilmuir Community Trust, and he will not take part in the discussion for this application. Councillor Calaray has also declared a non-financial interest in the Voices of the Land application as a Director of Inid Throndernish. I hope that's the right pronunciation, but apologies if not, and will not take part in this application. Councillor John Gordon has declared a non-financial interest in the Climavore application as a member of the steering group for Climavore and will not take part in the discussion for this item. And lastly, Councillor John Finlayson has declared a non-financial interest in the Castle Moyle Path application as his partner is a member of Kayaking and Calaray Community Council, and he will not take part in discussion on this application. And that's it, Chair.
Thank you, Alistair. Item 3 on the agenda is the minutes, and they are circulated for information. And these minutes were held on the 30th of November, as well as the meeting on the 7th of January, which was a special meeting of the committee. And they were submitted for approval and were approved on the 25th of March. So they are for noting. So item 4 is Police Scotland and the local committee performance report. And we're joined by Inspector Linda Allen. Good morning, Linda.
Good morning.
Thanks for joining us this morning. Linda, do you want to speak to this paper, and then members will have, I'm sure, some questions and comments about the report?
Yes, no problem. Obviously it's presented there. I can take you briefly through some of the main priorities there. Road safety, road crime, fortunately you'll see no fatalities there and no seriously injured in the last sort of reporting period, so very good in relation to that. Just given the reduced volume of traffic on the road, a lot of people think that we were a lot quieter in that regard. However, you'll see the number of people detected there for speeding has actually gone up significantly. This is due to the sort of proactive work. We have had a reduction in the sort of normal call sort of types that we would normally have around this time of the year. So staff have been proactively involved, just basically going out and dealing with the concerns that local community councils do raise with us, such as speeding in and around built-up areas. So that explains the significant increase there in detection. So I'm just still encouraging the staff to go out and carry out those tests. Unfortunately, obviously it means that a lot of the people detected are either local to the area or working in the area, obviously given the lockdown restrictions. So we're still trying to get that message out that we will actually still deal with the speeding concerns on the road there. So that's really the sort of road safety, road crime aspect of it. Moving on to the sort of serious and organised crime, again, one thing I will bring to your attention, the prevention intervention activity there, it says there's been 4 misuse of drugs warrants executed this reporting period. It's actually now 6. We executed another 2 on Friday evening locally in the Portry area, with positive result at both addresses. So just continuing again, like I say, more work in the sort of proactive community concerns that are in and around potential substance misuse in the area. Then on to acquisitive crime. Obviously quite low numbers, fortunately, in the area in relation to the sort of theft HBs. Obviously the theft by shopliftings that it speaks about there is down, given that, you know, non-essential businesses are actually closed. So again, still a little bit different from past years that we've had, obviously. Antisocial behaviour, violence and disorder, again affected by obviously licensed premises being down, alcohol, getting drunk in the street, obviously, or behaviours in the street after alcohol's been drunk. So again, figures obviously affected there. Obviously the licensed premises checks won't be getting done, but that'll all kick off again come the 26th of April, and we'll go back to sort of activities that were done when we lifted the restrictions previously, potentially joint visits with Trading Standards Council, etc. So yeah, again, just focusing in and around the areas that we know have been concerns and just taking some positive action in that regard, and enforcing fixed penalties, etc. in relation to non-compliance of COVID restrictions, which has been quite sort of high number of reports, but not always resulting obviously in fixed penalties, because we go through the sort of engage, explain, encourage prior to the sort of enforcement stages. Then moving on to the protecting vulnerable people, again quite low numbers, but obviously we deal with a lot of incidents that come in, and historical offences have been sort of prevalent in relation to the sort of last reporting period, and that again is affected by numerous things, and I'm sure people have seen in the news in relation to work that will be ongoing in relation to schools, education, universities, etc. So we may see an increase. Don't know, you know, we'll just have to wait and see how that affects us in the local area. Then on to terrorism, public order. Again, for us, we just constantly monitor the intelligence. You know, we've all seen obviously issues in other parts of the country in relation to sort of extremism, or, you know, unfortunate incidents where, you know, across globally where people are affected by this. But we constantly just monitor the intelligence, do some prevention intervention work where we can, and work with the agencies across not only Scotland but obviously the UK, and any intelligence would be acted upon. So in relation to that, nothing to report locally, but certainly we still keep aware of it, and know that, you know, sort of extremism, counter-terrorism can come in any aspect in any part of the geographic location. So that's where we are at the moment.
Thank you, Linda. I'm sure it's been a very different year for you and your officers, like I'm sure a lot of other services, yet still very busy. In terms of COVID, Linda, how much time would you say was taken up by officers, say, in terms of coming out of that first lockdown when the island and the area got really busy again and there was a lot of irresponsible camping? And also in terms of lockdown breaches, how much time again would be taken up by officers in terms of people reporting others? You know, I know there's an online form now where you can report people that have breached lockdown. Would you say that's taken up quite a bit of officer time?
Yeah, quite a significant part in relation to the sort of online reporting, or people reporting potentially holiday homes, etc. I would say, you know, you would average, probably couldn't do it statistically, but I would say, you know, we've got a call sitting there for an area in Glendale this morning, so they'll be going out to check out that in relation to 3 properties. So potentially maybe sort of like a call a day, roughly, in relation to sort of holiday homes being used for either because we have found that obviously you go out there and people are carrying out essential work or whatever it may be on the home that's not been used or, you know, looked at for the past 6 months. But also responding to other calls in relation to people camping, and we have, you know, responded to that. We had, say last weekend, for example, a call to Glenbrittle saying that there was 4 campers down there. They go down, and yes, they had travelled 400 miles to come and climb the Coolan. you know, camped in the middle of nowhere and very responsibly camping, but obviously not in compliance with any of the lockdown regulations. So sent on their way again back 400 miles to where they've come from. So yeah, they are spending quite a bit of time. I think that will only increase come the 26th of April, because obviously the free movement across Scotland, holiday homes opening back up again, but people still have the concerns as to where people are travelling from and what their behaviour is. So yeah, we'll just have to keep on top of it. It's getting looked at across the division and nationally, obviously, because there'll be other areas out within division that, you know, will be affected. But certainly for Skye and Raasay, it'll be just trying to keep on top of, you know, what the situation will be. We were already, what were we, second top tourist destination in Scotland, so I don't think we're going to have dropped down very much come lockdown restrictions being lifted.
No, by all accounts, I think we'll be one of the busiest places.
Yeah.
Councillor Finlayson, do you want to come?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. The question I always ask, Linda, how's your staffing numbers? Are you up to scratch? Because I think, as Councillor Gordon has said, it's going to be a very busy tourist season, and we're awaiting that influx after the 26th. The other one was, in terms, Linda, of community councils, it would be helpful if we had maybe a list of who the key officer is for community councils, because certainly when I go to a number of community councils, I'm not sure they're aware of that, because it might then also facilitate dealing with issues that maybe you don't have to deal with centrally if the local communities can have a chat with an officer at a community council. So it'd be quite good if we could have that list so that we could pass that on. And I suppose finally, thinking of the tourist season, we were speaking to Malcolm MacLeod earlier on the importance of team working. So how do you feel that team working is going and could improve, considering we are anticipating a very busy season? Thanks, Linda.
Yeah, no problem. In relation to staffing, we're currently sitting at full complement. However, that will change over the next couple of months before your next meeting. We have Rona down in Kyle, Rona MacDonald will be leaving Kyle. She's going to work in Mull. She applied for a post in Mull and was successful in taking up that appointment. And Marion PC McCallum here, who has been with us for a number of years now, will be retiring at the end of May. So we'll potentially, or we will be losing those two officers, and I have another 3 people that are in for posts elsewhere. Just with the ability to now, as we sort of touched on earlier, is to work from home or from an office remotely, it opens up the opportunities for staff to get involved in projects further afield. So posts that weren't potentially already open to them, it now actually opens up those opportunities, but with the understanding that if someone gets a post on a national team, that then opens up a post back here to be filled up. So I have adverts out at the moment. The closing date is on Friday for full-time posts, and also authority to continue our secondees. I have 2 secondees with me just now, one from Dundee who's potentially looking to stay full-time, and the other from Edinburgh. So they finish on the 27th of July, I believe it is. But as I say, authority for another 2 secondees to come in. So it's a bit flexible, but we have a sort of contingency in place to hopefully fill those posts once we lose the members of staff. The Community Council, PC Yanni Karikoskinen, who was a member of our original team here, is one of the officers that's taken up a support role. So he works from Portry, but is a base post for Portry and Fort William. So he now takes ownership of sending out a community newsletter to all community councils. So he's the sort of first point of contact, but I'll make sure that he sends out a list with them of who each community council representative would be, and then that would take it just to ensure that everyone has that knowledge. So I'll get Yanni to do that for me and get that sent out. The joint work in relation to the tourism, I think is obviously very good, and I noticed that, you know, there's adverts out for the Rangers. I'm apologies if I don't know the proper term, but the sort of rangers, 2 rangers across Skye area. So yeah, we'd be keen to do some obviously joint working with them. It's just we had Coast Guard involved initially, but just with the changes in COVID regulations, etc., we've not had that opportunity to do as much joint working with people around these issues as we would normally. But as you say, hopefully with the restrictions lifted, the tourism, or I'm not going to say the tourism, the issues that may come with some people visiting the island. It's not the tourism that causes the issues. It's, you know, it's people irresponsibly camping or whatever, you know, parking or whatever. There'll be issues that we will be looking at jointly with other agencies once we can get those sort of meetings and groups, and we actually see if you know, hopefully there might not be any issues, but you know, maybe that's been a bit hopeful. But yeah, we've certainly, as you know, been here 24/7 throughout the whole time, so a lot of agencies are just getting back on their feet in relation to getting back into the office or back out into the communities, so we'll certainly be carrying on any work, and there is work, as I say, getting done across N Division as a whole, given that, you know, we have North Coast 500, etc., so we're not going to be alone in some of our challenges that will be faced.
Yeah, thank you, Linda. Councillor Munro.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, Linda. Thanks for the report. I think looking back at the year that's passed, I think the experience you've had of dealing with all the many issues in terms of antisocial behaviour and tourist issues with tourists and breaches of the guidance, I think that's hopefully stand you in good stead in the year ahead. I think the points you make there about joint working with the new Highland Council Rangers is extremely important, and I think we can hopefully give our community some confidence as we go forward. Councillor Finlayson makes a good point about the community councils. I think there's a chance there to have, you know, get an ear to the ground by making sure we have, you know, good contacts with community council. Glad to see, and this, what I experienced too, is really good adherence in our Skye and Raasay communities to the guidelines.
Absolutely.
Which is what we experienced on the whole, remarkable really since March last year. The other point I picked out on the data was about the stop and search, Linda, and what situations, what would trigger a stop and search? You know, why would your officers carry out a stop and search? What were sort of indicators which would bring that?
It all depends on the circumstances, but say at the weekend there, one of our sergeants carried out a stop and search on someone who he knows to be involved in drug activity based on previous intelligence, approached them, slurred speech, smelling of cannabis. So there has to be good grounds that you can't just, you know, just as we all know, it's been quite public, and we really don't have those challenges because it's a small community. We do tend to know a lot of the people who are going around, particularly at this time. So yeah, it's based on, you know, intelligence and what you see in front of you, based on the circuit, potentially leaving an address where there may have just been a warrant executed, or, you know, approaching that address, you know, circumstances that would suggest that it's maybe pertinent to approach that individual and have that. So, but it all gets reviewed, such as, you know, when that individual does it, is it, you know, that sergeant who stopped and searched that person, it then gets reviewed by myself to make sure that the circumstances were proportionate and necessary in the circumstances. So there is that audit given locally to make sure that it's not random stop searches on individuals with no reason.
Thank you, Linda. Councillor MacLeod.
Hi, good morning, Linda. Thanks for that. Just a quick question, really. There's been a lot of discussion nationally on the need for prioritising police to be inoculated. I'm just wondering how your officers are faring in that respect locally.
Yeah. Not too bad in the situation that if there was spare vaccines available. I did have a phone call on one occasion where we thought it was just going to be a couple of people, but in Kyle there was actually 5 officers inoculated all at the same time, just given it was a close of play at the day and they still had opened vaccine. I don't know how it works, but if you open a certain amount and you have to use them or they go out, so that was certainly offered. We have other situations now where like myself, just locally through the community. I lived next to the hall where they were doing the test, and I got a phone call from a GP saying, will you come in if we get a slot that's free, you know, just because I lived there, you know, as opposed to sort of because I was a police officer, and another couple of people locally have had that opportunity as well. So certainly the people who got inoculated at Kyle were done so because they were in the police, but it's something that our division are looking at, you know, just to make sure that we are aware of it. But we're very rigorous in our approach to the sort of PPE equipment that we get given. You know, if you think you're going to be within 2 metres of someone and not being able to maintain that 2 metre distance, you've got an FPP3 masks. We've all got 4 kits of that, and it will get renewed within a couple of days. We have the sort of lower level sort of surgical mask type things if we're going around the office, if we get up and stand and walk away from our desk. But the FPP3 masks, you'll see the police officers, if they're out and about, will have a surgical mask on or an FPP3 if they can't maintain social distance at any point, which, you know, if you're going to a call in someone's house, then the chances of you being able to maintain that at all times. So we've been very, very strict, and don't want to touch wood, you know, too quickly, but we haven't had any cases within any of our stations, and we're fortunate that the standard of cleanliness kept up very high within the offices, and we all stick rigidly to the guidelines that are out. So yeah, we have done quite well in relation to maintaining that level. And as I say, if the opportunity comes up again where officers who haven't had the vaccine are offered it, then we would do it. They've said they'll come in and their time off, just to, you know, to ensure that they were, because our concern always is obviously that we're not only dealing with the people who are breaching the COVID guidelines, but then the next call that you get might be going into the vulnerable within the community who've been shielding for however long. So it's just that balance of, you know, trying to maintain safety for everybody.
Thank you, Linda. Say, in terms of the report, I noticed in the road safety and road crime, the numbers have jumped quite considerably this year, if I've read it right, in terms of speeding.
Yes, yeah.
And I just wonder, like, where would you see the hotspots in terms of the numbers there? I know as members we speak quite often, obviously, to police and to the council and to Transport Scotland in terms of making representation about hotspots, and they continue to be there. You know, I'm sure we've all got the same lists, but would you say there was like certain hotspots where that number has kind of come to?
I think, I mean, we do have a number of people on the team that is their sort of like passion, if you like. They're not going to drive around the island aimlessly. They would rather stand on a stop point and deal with the offences that, you know, community councils actually report to us. So it will be the areas that are identified by the community council. So your majority there will be in and around Broadford, in and around Viewfield Road and Portry. The areas that have been raised by us numerous occasions, Inverina, which takes out of this area, obviously, this committee, but yeah, in and around areas that Broadford Community Council report, Portry Community Council report, the Dunvegan, yeah, virtually any area that we've had to cross any concerns raised us about that they've been going out and targeting because the call levels in other areas have been reduced. They've had that time to do it. Our superintendent actually phoned the other day and asked if we'd had the road policing over because she'd seen so many sort of areas of activity. But it's just the team, you know, they like, not that they like doing it, they like getting that message out that we're still out and about, and if they're seen at the side of the road, they're actually still visible, they're not sitting in the police station. So they've got their mobile devices now, it allows them to do their work out and about. So just encourage them to, you know, get out and about, and they can obviously deal with most things now on their mobile device at the side of the road as well, so issuing tickets, etc.
Yeah, and say in terms of the phalloskers that happened recently, I know there's a reason for the muir burn and, you know, burning the heather. I mean, it's part of crofting life, and, you know, it does help nature and the wildlife. But in terms of the burning of the heather or phalloskers, do you get warnings that there's going to be fires? And again, how much officer time was taken up with the fires that happened? Because there was quite a few across the whole island, and I mean, the pictures were quite surprising when you just saw how close to the road some of them were. And I think John Finlayson had one of most impacting pictures down near Louise. I mean, it was quite considerable just how close people were to the fire, because it was obviously out of control. But I just wonder, are you made aware of these? And again, does it take up a lot of your time?
Yeah, they're reported to the fire service, and we've been in contact with the fire service obviously about it. You know, we're in an unusual situation that we don't have the full-time fire role, you know, where you would have elsewhere. People are retained, so we've been trying to maintain that, because if there is a response required, it's obviously calling people out, and there's obviously not only the safety aspect for others, but the COVID issues as well about people then responding as emergency, the same with the mountain rescue. So yeah, there's been a lot of discussion. I've been in discussions both with other agencies about it and also members of the public, because 2 of the fires were recorded and are being dealt with as criminal. A lot of people say in relation to them being wildfires, well, a lot of them weren't wild, they were actually lit. So, you know, and if they were lit irresponsibly, then that's criminal in our book. And, you know, I know there's 2 camps for the actual whether it should go ahead or not, but as far as we're concerned, if there is criminal liability, we will be dealing with it and reporting it accordingly. And as I say, on 2 occasions we found that both, you know, were lit without any sort of appropriate measures in place and required an emergency response from both services. So it's not appropriate in the circumstances to deal with that as a wildfire, as some people would call it. But wildfires, we tend to think are, you know, campers who've accidentally lit a fire, as opposed to someone who's gone and purposefully lit a fire on Croftland.
Yeah. Thank you, Linda. And just one more question from me in terms of the drugs in the report. And I know a lot of drugs go on in our communities, and a lot of that world is unseen. And I'm sure a lot of your work that your officers do is unseen by our communities too, in terms of dealing with drugs. But what can we as communities do in terms of helping that? And I know that's probably a big question, but we all know that there is an unseen world there in terms of drugs, and you know, they are the scourge of our communities. And I suppose it's just like, how do we work together in terms of that?
I think that the big thing is the information. I mean, there were 2 drugs warrants, as I said, executed on Friday evening, where we had units over from Inverness to assist with the execution of those warrants. If we have the intelligence coming in that gives us the sort of addresses, people involved, you know, and any information relating to it, and it can be done through Crime Stoppers anonymously. If we get that in and it builds up a picture, then we can apply for the warrants, which was what was done last week. We've got a lot of staff who are very skilled and experienced in progressing that, so it's not an issue at all. It's not, you know, there's no lack of skills in this area for people to address it. It's just, will a sheriff grant it on the intelligence that we've got? So we require that information to come in from communities. So there was enough information for those addresses, so the warrants were acted on. As I say, both were positive result warrants, so it does show that. And plus that also gets the message out. It didn't take long before the jungle drums were beaten as to whose house had been done, etc. Even I got told, so you're kind of like, I think I know. It's Friday night, but I think I know who was involved. But yeah, it is one of those things that we just rely on. You know, a lot of people speak about it, but unless they tell us and it's recorded and assessed appropriately as intelligence, then we can't really act on sort of word in the street type thing. So it's getting it recorded appropriately, as I say, through Crime Stoppers or through ourselves. Okay,
thanks for that, Linda. Any other questions or comments from members? Or no? Well, thanks, Linda, for your time, and thanks to all your officers for all the work that you do in the area. And I'm sure there'll be lots of partner working as we open up the island again for tourists and people travelling around a bit more. So thanks again.
No, thank you.
Thank you. Cheers, Linda. Okay, item 5 on our agenda is the Highlands Coastal Community Fund, and we're joined by Wendy Anderson and Fiona Cameron, who both have done so much work behind the scenes to get us to where we are with the funding and this report. So firstly, thank you both for all your work. We all know how much work goes into this. So I'm just going to hand over to Fiona, who's going to speak to the paper, and then we'll go through the different applications one by one as members. So thanks, Fiona.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, members. So yes, as mentioned, this is the Highland Coastal Communities Fund, which is a new fund in Highland. It's generated from the Crown Estate's net revenues and comes into Highland Council as a local authority allocation. And at the moment, we've got what's actually 2 years worth of allocation. So it's worth reminding members it's slightly larger than we'd normally expect the allocation to be annually. So in Highland at the moment, that means there's an overall allocation of just over £3 million. And for Skye, that works out at just over £500,000 worth of an allocation. We would expect that there would be another annual allocation coming through probably around October time, but we don't have that confirmed yet, but that's the expectation. So in terms of what you've got in front of you today, we have 19 projects presented to you for consideration, and these total £689,469.27 of grant funding. So as you'll be aware, that means that the pot is currently oversubscribed. I would just remind you that the maximum grant size we would look at within this funding is £100,000, and you have one application for that amount. So as per the paper, we would ask members today to go through the applications and consider whether they wish to approve, defer or reject the application. And in consideration of the fact that the fund is oversubscribed, I would also remind members that you do have the discretion to award a lower amount than the grant that has been requested from the applicant. So just to make a general point about that, I would say obviously if members do wish to go down that road today, that is, as I say, entirely at your own discretion, but we wouldn't have had any discussion with applicants around how that might then affect the viability of their project. So just to make you aware that if that was the case, what we would look to do is go back and discuss that with applicants following committee, but essentially we would be making a conditional offer, meaning that applicants have a task then to source alternative match funding from elsewhere to cover the shortfall in the project, or an applicant may wish to reduce the scope of the project and cut the costs accordingly. To aid you in your decision making today, we have undertaken a technical assessment and a RAG assessment of all the projects. I just wanted to mention that briefly. It's been provided as an appendix to the committee papers. Just to say really that it is intended as a guide. The technical assessment is very much based on the black and white evidence that the applicant supplies through the application process. So for example, with something like match funding, we'd be looking for formal confirmation that that's been received. And the RAG assessment is, again, based on the evidence supplied by the applicant. So this is just intended as a guide, and I just wanted to highlight that where, for example, we've scored something a red in the RAG assessment, it's not seen as a barrier to the project progressing. It would more be seen as something that flags up concern. So we're really looking at the degree to which the applicant has met the criteria. So generally, an amber or a red rating might indicate that we would wish to attach a funding condition if you make an approval. But there are no ineligible applications in front of you today. So technically, these are all eligible applications, and over to you for the decision. So I think that was just to bring out some headline points. I'm more than happy to answer any questions or go through the projects individually as you wish to.
Okay, thanks, Fiona. If any members have got any questions or comments at this point before we go through them, raise your hand. So I'll ask John Finlayson to come.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks to Fiona and Wendy and Willie and all the other officers who have worked with the different applicants and members over recent months in a transparent and robust way to ensure we use this very welcome Coastal Communities Fund to make positive change and additions right across Skye and Raasay. I think it's important to say that it's been a rigorous process which could only have been carried out with the regular engagement between officers, applicants and members. And the many hours we've spent on the process will, I'm sure, be appreciated by the groups and communities that will receive awards, as well as those who will benefit from future funding. I think it's also really heartening to see that the applications we have here today are from right across the ward and also clearly support the initial ambitions we set out when we received our allocation, namely supporting economic recovery, community resilience, mitigating the impact of climate change and addressing the challenges of rural depopulation. And I think, as Fiona said, given the information that is in the paper and the RAG sheet and the description of each project, can I also support what you've said, Chair, and can I suggest that we go through each individual application and perhaps individual members who have a close appreciation of that application and have no conflict of interest say a few words about the project, and we can then make the decision in relation to whether we support, defer or reject the application. So I just thought I'd make that a short introduction to support what we're doing. Thank you. You're on silent, John.
Oh, my apologies. Any other questions or comments from Councillor Munro or MacLeod at this stage? No. So at this moment, then we'll go through them one by one, and they're either approved, deferred, or rejected. Yeah. So we'll go. We've got the list in front of us. So the first one on my list is Radio Skye, formerly known as Coolin FM. And this project will make quite a big difference to those in the north of Skye plus South Skye in terms of being able to tune into Radio Skye. I know there's places still across the island where they cannot get Radio Skye. So having this funding and this project would install new antennas in both parts of the island and would make a huge difference to the whole radio and to the island. And we know just how much Radio Skye contributes to our communities, you know, when there's a power cut or even just through the whole COVID thing, they've disseminated a lot of information and they just want to expand what they're doing. So yeah, this is going to make a huge difference to our communities. And their grant application is for £18,400 and the total project cost is £26,700. So members, we have the opportunity to approve, defer or reject. I don't know if Fiona, if you want to say anything about each project as we go along, or...
Thank you, Chair. I think a couple of them it might be useful to just provide a slight update, but most of them I think will be as per the assessments you've been circulated. Okay, so for this one I would defer to Wendy as it was her that assessed it, but I think this one as it was. Okay,
thank you. Wendy, is there anything you want to add at the stage? Either of you put up your hand whenever you want to speak as well, so and we'll take your comments or questions. Thanks.
Thank you. No, this is a good application and it's got both match funding and permissions from the landowners confirmed.
Okay, thank you. So members, I propose that this is approved, yeah?
Yep.
Approved, yes.
Agreed. Thank you. So the next one on the list is the Kayaking and Calaray Community Council, and this project is about access paths to the castle. So Callum MacLeod, I think, is going to speak on this.
Yes, thank you, Chair, again, and just to reiterate, thank you to all the officers for all the hard work that's went on behind the scenes. This is a tremendous boost for the local community in Kayaking. And you know, at a time where many people have been taking up walking, I think this is a marvellous asset for the community, and I would like to welcome this to be approved.
So members, do we accept the approval of this one? Callum Munro?
Agree, yes.
Agree, thank you. I think John Finlayson just stepped out there. That's him back. So the next one is the Geary Common Grazing Committee, and this project is about the regeneration of the Crofting Township, and I think Callum Munro is going to introduce it.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I think all these applications just reflect the diversity of our area, different outcomes they're going to achieve for our islands. So this was a really interesting application for the Gary community, and it's really good. It's got potential to be a template for other communities, other crofting townships too, which is in itself is worthwhile. In terms of our outcomes, in terms of community resilience and addressing rural depopulation. I definitely think it's a strong application. They intend to let's just create a sustainable and stable community by creating new crafts and hopefully developing affordable housing too. So they've really done a lot of, or they do intend to consult with their community. They have support for it, but they do intend to give a good degree of consultation about future developments. So their final request is £15,125, and I think this is a good application which I would be approving.
Okay, is that agreed, members? Yeah.
Yeah, agreed.
Okay, the next one is the Broadford and Strath Community Company, and this project is Algol Toilets and Visitor Centre. John Finlayson.
Thank you, Chair. I think this is a really positive project. I'm aware of how much work has gone in to date to the development of toilets in both Broadford and Algol. And as you can see from the application, it's to create accessible toilets, upgraded sewage system, adjacent disabled parking, waste and water facilities for camper vans, electrical charging points, improved parking, and facilities which are safe and hygienic. And while they respond to the tourism industry, they'll also respond directly to the COVID-19 situation. I think the amount asked for is only a small amount considering the whole cost of the project. I know the group are waiting on confirmation from the Rural Tourist Infrastructure Fund of the application to them. My understanding is, and I can't say categorically, is that will be a positive news. So we've talked about the need to improve facilities for visitors and for the community, because this will also support the community. So I would propose that we grant the request for 34,500 to assist with the overall cost of nearly 230,000 of this very forward-thinking project.
Thank you. Are members in agreement?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Yeah. Thank you. I'm having a slight technical issue here. I might just have to come out and come back in if that's okay, if everyone just gives me a second.
Have we lost our chair?
Just might take a minute or two, members.
My apologies about that. Everyone still here? Yeah. Okay, so the next one is the Portry and Raasay Community Trust, and this project is the Calaray Square feasibility study. I'm sure we all know the area in Portry where the Portry Community Centre is, and obviously there's been a number of issues over the years with the centre. It's been closed for some time just because of structural repairs and just the building needing either major upgrade or a new build. And there's so much potential around that area, including the Red Pitch, the old swimming pool site, the play park, the King George V area. There's the nursery up there. So it's an important part of Portry, and the Portry and Raasay Community Trust are looking at a feasibility study for the whole area. And obviously they want to identify different stakeholders to be involved in this and to take forward a project there. We all know that it needs developed. The total project cost is 35,000. The grant request from the Portry and Raasay Community Trust is 31,500. And I'm just minded to approve this, and I ask other members to also agree with the approval.
Agreed.
Agreed.
Okay, thank you. So the next one is the Edinburgh, the Edinburgh, slightly different council area, maybe. The Edinburgh Community Company, and this is a project at Lindale for multi-use paths. And I'm just looking at my notes to see who's going to speak on this, unless whoever.
Excuse me, Chair. I'll speak to this.
Alan, yeah.
Thanks, Chair. This is a project which is going to, again, fit in well with active travel, as we've really seen in the last year. People have become so aware of the benefits of that. So this is part of this project. It's also really strong in terms of connecting parts of the Edinburgh community. It's got widespread community support in the consultations which have been carried out, and it's going to bridge gaps in what's there already. So it's not all new. There's existing bits which can be linked together by part of this. It's going to really create amenity for the Edinburgh area. And also there's one maybe overarching aspect to this which we're aware of, is the Skye cycle network, and it will fit into this well, which is potentially transformational for Skye. So they're looking for £25,000. Total project cost is 118, but I believe there's quite a bit of match funding coming into this too. So Wendy or Fiona, is there anything you want to highlight in that? I'm minded to approve this.
Yeah. Is that agreed, members?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. The next one on the list is the Skye Sailing Club, and Callum MacLeod is going to present it. Callum, you're on mute.
Sorry, thank you, Chair. This is a marvellous opportunity. We are an island nation, and this is a proposal for funding a new craft. It's an excellent way to get people involved in recreational activities. And Portry Harbour is an ideal place for that. So I would like to welcome the 22,655 for approval for this. So thank you.
Okay, so members agreeable to approve, yeah?
Can I just maybe ask, Chair, are we approving the full application or just part of the application costs? Fiona, do you want to?
I think Fiona, Callum MacLeod, Callum and Road, do you want to come out this point?
Yeah, I believe that we felt that the funding was £40,000 was not what we settled on. I think we settled on something maybe close to half that, about £22,000. Is that correct, Fiona? Do you have a figure for that, Phil?
So yes, I think members indicated they would be interested in supporting one safety boat, which I think Wendy will keep me right, but I believe the cost is 22,150 grant for that.
No, it was 22,556.
Thanks, Wendy.
Yeah.
Okay.
So are we agreeable to fund the one boat for this project?
Agreed.
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 Yeah, thank you. So the next one is the Slate Community Trust, and this is a project at Tormore Forest, and I'll hand over to John Finlayson.
Okay, thank you, Chair. I think this is a sensible request given the success of this project to date. This is a proven project. This is going to support the sustainability of the project and also the development, and it's clearly going to make life easier for those involved. The total cost of the project is 16,500, and they're requesting 13,560, which I think is a modest request given the good work that's happening with this project. It's a community trust project, so I'm minded to recommend that we approve this request.
Okay, are members minded to approve? Yep. Thank you. The next one is, I don't know if someone's got their microphone still on, there's a bit of echo, sorry. The next one is the Manganese Community Hall Association, and this is for a project over at the Fairy Pools in terms of path and habitat improvements. And this project will help to improve the existing paths and the creation of new viewpoints at the Fairy Pools, which will make a huge difference to not only visitors but locals' experience of that area. And we all know how popular that area is. It's become extremely popular on the island, and the amount of work that's been done already there has been quite incredible, and this will help just to enhance what has already been done. And I think one of the things we're all pushing for across the island is for more people to be at various hotspots in the island, and this project will help underpin and secure jobs directly involved with the visitor management, and which will include 2 full-time operatives and seasonal workers at the Fairy Pools car park. Obviously, it generates quite a bit of income, but this is going to help the environment as well. And again, as I said, visitors' experience. So it's a worthwhile project. The grants that they are asking for is £20,000, and the total project cost for this is £143,500. So it's quite a big project, and again will make quite a big difference. So I'll just ask Callum Monroe if he wants to come in.
Thanks, Chair. Just try to think, recalling our previous discussions on this particular application. I think because of the relationship with the Outdoor Access Trust of Scotland, that they certainly take some proportion of the income from the car park, and we felt that we weren't clear that they were maybe meeting there or contributing what they potentially could contribute. So I recall that we said a lower amount of perhaps £5,000 would be appropriate till this was we could maybe confirm what OATS could contribute.
Okay, thanks for that, Callum. John Finlayson?
Yeah, I mean, I'd just like to echo what Councillor Monroe said. Given the income that is generated at the site, I think it's reasonable to expect a larger contribution from the Outdoor Access Trust. So I support what Councillor Monroe has indicated, and I would recommend 5,000.
Okay. Callum MacLeod?
Yes, I approve that. You
agree with that? Yes, so £5,000 for Manganese Community Hall Association. The next one is the Broadford and Strath Community Company, and this project is called Corrie Capers, and I'll hand over to John Finlayson.
Thank you again, Chair. mean, I think what's important to state, at this stage is if we had the full amount to give every single application its full amount, it would be fantastic. But very clearly, we know that this is not the case. And we also know of the criteria we put in place for the allocation of the funding, and also keen is to ensure that there's a geographical spread of funding. But I'm very, very aware of the importance of this project. As you can see, it's a new permanent outdoor learning centre. Outdoor learning is strongly recommended for our young people in terms of both educational attainment, but also in dealing with the pandemic that we've just gone through. So I'm very keen that we do give an allocation to this group to facilitate the fine work that they want to continue to do and also build on. I'm conscious that perhaps we can't fund them for the full amount asked for, which is 23,225. So with my colleagues' approvals, I'd like to recommend that we give them £11,612.50, which is half the cost. And then I'm sure Fiona and Wendy will get back to them and see how this can facilitate what they want to do, because we do want to support our young people, and outdoor learning is something that we really do want to promote.
Okay, thanks, John. Are members minded to agree?
Agreed.
Okay, thank you. So the next one is Climavore, and I'm going to step out for this one, and I'll hand over to the clerk, who will then decide who's taking this on. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, in terms of the Climavore application, the Chair has declared an interest in standing down for this item. So members, can I have a nomination for interim chair, please, for this item?
Alistair, I'll nominate Councillor Finlayson to take the chair for this item, please.
And do I have a seconder for that?
I second that.
Okay, thank you. I'll hand over to Councillor Finlayson.
Okay, thank you very much, Alistair. Thank you very much, Callum and Callum. So Climavore project. So I think Councillor MacLeod, you've got a bit of information around about this, and will allow us to make a decision.
Yes, I think this is a good boost for certainly environmental credentials. I think I've been to one of their events before, and I think it encourages all manner of people, all age groups across the spectrum, to get involved in environmental issues and looking at ways we can harvest the sea and benefit from that. So I would move to approve this.
Okay, Councillor MacLeod. So the overall cost of the project is 23,732, and the grant request has been for 7,000. So are members happy to approve that? I certainly am.
I agree with that too, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. Could the substantive chair, could we ask him back, Alistair, so he can take over again?
Sure. I think he's still online, so.
Okay, over to you, John.
Thank you. Thanks, John. So the next one is the Razzie Development Trust, and this project is to create pontoons and offshore facilities on Razzie. The project will include 2 access bridges, a permanent 12-berth pontoon that will remain afloat at all times, with the potential of adding capacity to these pontoons. It will also provide water, Wi-Fi and electricity at the pontoons, as well as toilet, showers and laundry facilities at the ferry terminal, as well as for camper van hookup points, waste and refuse recycling facilities, and 2 electric car charging points. And again, this will make a huge difference as people approach Razzie just at the ferry terminal there. The total project cost for this is £663,564, and their request to the coastal communities is for £74,003. So again, are members minded to approve this?
Yes, I approve.
Yeah, absolutely.
Agreed. Thank you. Okay, the next one is the Broadford and Strath Community Company, and the project is Community Coordinator, and I'll hand back to John Finlayson.
Thank you again, Chair. I mean, I think we all know the importance of community groups on our island, on our islands, in fact. And during this last year, we've seen the tremendous work that community groups have been doing. I think it's also fair to say that Broadford and Strath Community Company have been particularly proactive in recent years in some of the initiatives they've set up. But unlike some trusts, they haven't actually got a permanent project officer. So this is really to support them in the tremendous work they're doing, but also allow them to develop even further. And the proposal is to establish community development officer to better build facilities and to make them more sustainable. I've got every confidence that this investment will bear fruit and we'll see returns from this investment that could be 5 and 10-fold. So I'm very conscious of the tremendous work that happens, and I'd like to recommend a grant of 34,200 from the total project cost of 49,800.
Okay, thank you, John. So our member is minded to approve?
Agreed.
Agreed. Yes.
Yeah, thank you. So the Callum Monroe, do you want to come in?
I believe it's the application from Community Trusts, which means I'll step out for this item, Chair.
Okay, we'll let you know when we're finished this one. Yeah, thanks. Okay, so this is the Kilmuir Community Trust, and the project is the Kilmuir Community Hub. So I'll hand over to Callum MacLeod.
Thank you, Chair. I think this is a really good project for meeting all the criteria for community resilience, COVID recovery, and it's certainly been identified with meeting all the wider strategies. So we've taken everything into consideration, and I'm unable to get the final amount that was agreed. Sorry, Fiona, could you maybe come in with that?
Thank you. Yeah, just to update members as well that since the paperwork for the meeting was circulated, there's a slight update to this project, which is just that they have now had a topographical study undertaken. So overall, that brings the costs of the project down by about £13,000, which in actual fact then reduces the need for match funding. So I'm just mentioning that because at the moment I have it scored as a red for match funding, whereas in actual fact I think it would be better reflected by an amber now. And so yes, and they would still like to apply for the full grant of £50,000.
Thank you. So I would like to move to approve this. Thanks. Thank you, Fiona.
Okay.
Yeah, happy to approve, yes.
Yeah, so that's approved. Thank you, members. Just wait for Callum to come back in.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Callum. So the next one is a project up at the Kilt Rock car park extension, and the applicant is the Highland Council, and Callum Monroe is going to speak on this.
Thank you, Chair. Well, obviously, Kilt Rock is one of our most iconic sites, and certainly the car park doesn't match that. It's severely in need of upgrade. It detracts greatly from our island, to be honest, and it's in need of immediate repairs. So this application, there's quite a lot of investment required, but it's been decided to approach this in 2 phases. So that this phase would allow Highland Council to get repairs, effect repairs immediately or in the next few weeks for this year, for this coming tourist season. And phase 2 would be predicated on a grant to the RTIF funding, hopefully when that opens later in the year. So that would be a 2-phase approach to this iconic site and a car park which is much in need of upgrade, which I think is a good use of this money. So I would be, at this point, the request is £57,000 and 100 out of a total cost of £67,100. So I would be seeking approval for this.
Okay, Councillor Munro, are members minded to approve?
Absolutely.
Yeah, approved. The next one is a project called Casey Plus from Kayaking Connections, and I'll hand over to John Finlayson.
Thank you, Chair. I think, as we've discussed on many occasions, this is a really important project for both Skye and Lochash. And I think it's important to remind members that the facility operates within the framework of Skye and Lochash Association for Disability, and it encourages and supports independent living and life skills for adults with learning and physical disabilities. And we also know how difficult the transition can be at times from children's services to adult services. So at this stage, the total cost of the project is 315,000. They're requesting 20% of the funding, which equates to 64,578. The building warrant and the planning permission have already gone through. So as I say, given the situation we're in with COVID-19, given the pressures that are on all youngsters and all adults in terms of mental health and disability, I think this is a project that we really, really do want to be supporting at this time. And I would strongly recommend that we support their grant request of £64,578.27.
Thank you. Agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed, Chair.
Thank you. The next one is In a Trotternish. The project is Voices of the Land, and I think Callum's going to step out again.
Excuse me, yes, I will step out for this item.
Yeah, and I'll hand over to Callum MacLeod.
Yeah, again, this is a project that we recognised was particularly useful for really enhancing our local cultural values. And I think, you know, these are the things that for COVID recovery particularly as well are needed for the community. So again, I've not been able to get the final amount there. Fiona, could you maybe come in with that?
I mean, it might be helpful if I just refer to some of the RAG criteria, because I think members previously had some concerns around the development work that was still needed with this project. So it absolutely seems like an excellent project, but I've only been able to give it a red rating for project robustness on account of the fact that there's a significant amount of match funding still to be secured. Yeah. Now, to update, since the application paperwork had come out to you, there has been a slightly increased amount received from Bord na Gaelig of 41,000, but it still leaves a shortfall of around $250,000, which is to be applied for to the, I think it's the National Lottery Heritage Fund. Just checking my paperwork here. Yeah, the National Lottery Heritage Fund and SSE. So although that request can come down slightly now, that application won't be due to be submitted until April, and I'm not sure when the decision would be made. So just really to reflect that that's why it had come through as a red in the RAG assessment, and I know members had some concerns about that. Thank you for that, Fiona. John Finlayson?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really important to recognise the amount of funding that was requested, and we did agree that we needed to be supporting projects that were ready to go, that had their match funding in place as far as possible. I think it's important to say that we think that we do support this project in principle, but I think my recommendation would be that we defer this at this stage, given the pressures that's on the budget. And I think it's one that we look at again when we consider the next round of Coastal Communities funding. So that would be my recommendation.
Yeah, I tend to agree. Again, I think we all support in principle the project, and we make a huge difference to the north end of the island in terms of what is being proposed. But I would agree that we would defer it for the time being. So is that agreed?
Yeah, agreed. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. We'll just wait for Callum Munro to come back in. So the next one on our list is the Hebridean diving services over at Steen. And this is part of the Steen regeneration project, and it's part of their second phase in terms of work that's done to regenerate the area. They are seeking funding to undertake some work at the shoreline, which is part of the conservation area. and just to stabilise the land which is there, which will give an opportunity to rebuild just that all historic area, because there is a part of Steen which is probably under threat just because of the shore, and this will make a big difference just to the frontage there at the Steen village. And again, it will enhance the local tourist trade as well as the area, and will help further create employment. And of course, we know there's quite a lot of marine eco-tourism in that area, and this will help to develop that. The grant that they are requesting is 25,000, and the total cost of this project is 53,245. So are members minded to approve this?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Agreed. Thank you. The next one is Staffing Community Trust for a project at the Slipway for redevelopment, and I'll hand over to Callum Monroe.
Thank you, Chair. Well, obviously, elected members have been aware of this project for a number of years, as is the local community. It's a big project which could be transformational. I mean, it ticks all the boxes in terms of economic recovery, community resilience, and also arresting rural depopulation. I suppose the concerns we would have, or I would have, would certainly be there's significant match funding required yet, and not in place, and there's still permissions to be progressed on this project. We note that there is nearly £1 million in set aside from the Regeneration Capital Grant Fund and also from the Maritime Fisheries Fund. And there was a meeting last week, and it's clear that planning permissions are going to be sought in the next few months to progress this. And I think once we have a better idea of where our contribution would go, I think would feel better placed to approve the request. The request is of £100,000, which is certainly within what we permit. But I feel with a little bit more development work on this project, taking it forward a bit more, we will be hopefully in a place to support it in future. Certainly, we're in principle right behind this project and realise the potential it has, but my opinion is we should defer at the moment till this is progressed a bit further.
Okay, thank you, Callum. John?
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I mean, I think as Councillor Monroe has articulated, this is a project that's been in development. It's making progress, but again, we've only got a limited budget, so we need to make sure that the money that we're putting out is going to be spent immediately. There's great potential within this project, and I strongly support what Councillor Monroe has said, that we defer it, and I'm sure it'll come back to us again in the future.
Yeah, I would agree. It's a very good project, and I'm sure one we all support and we want to see happen. But yeah, we need to defer this for the time being. So, is that agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Thank you. Well, I think we've gone through our list of projects. I don't know if Fiona or Wendy have anything they want to say at this stage.
No, thank you, members. I can confirm that the total approvals are now within your area allocation. We've just been keeping a track of that going along. So the amounts that you've agreed to award today can be awarded at the level you've requested without breaching your overall allocation. So thank you for that.
No, thank you. And I would just agree with what John Finlayson said at the beginning. This is going to make a huge difference to our two islands, and just to see that money being spread across the islands for some great projects that are really going to be really beneficial, not only for locals, but for tourists and, you know, for everybody that lives in the island. It's really encouraging, and yeah, it's just going to make a huge difference. Callum, do you want to come in?
Chair, thanks. I'd just like to, thank our staff for the work we've done on this. I think it's so appropriate we've just given out to you £500,000 of funding, which we couldn't have done without the groundwork, all the checks, all the technical work from Fiona and Wendy and their colleagues too. So it's just tremendous to see the diversity of projects and the geographical spread of this. It's really encouraging, and we really can look forward to perhaps £250,000 coming here annually on this terms, which we've now learned a lot about how to process. I think with the cut our teeth well, we've reached this point. These communities will be desperate to get their hands on that funding and to get these projects going. So thank you, Fiona. Thank you, Wendy, and to everybody else who's helped you along the way. Really do appreciate it. And the people of Skye and Raasay, I think, will now see the benefit of all your work. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Callum. John, and then Callum MacLeod.
Yeah, thanks again, Chair. And I think what's important to reiterate is that, I think as Councillor Monroe has said, we will be getting an annual allocation. And I think it's really, really important to empower communities to be thinking about how that money can best be spent. I mean, we've got a responsibility in terms of the allocation of this funding, and that responsibility means that we need to make sure it goes to the projects that can happen and can happen quickly and have got match funding. So as well as the good news about this funding, I think it also should give groups and communities the option to be thinking about what they need, but also the importance of getting match funding and getting support from other agencies, because that's how we move things forward. It's that whole team ethos that we've been trying to promote in terms of the Skye plan. And I think, as everyone has said to date, we can't administer this fund without support from officers in the council. And once again, although I've said it already, I'd like to thank the officers involved, Fiona and Wendy and Willie and everyone who's been involved, because this is a great boost for our community, and hopefully it's a boost we're going to see on an annual basis.
Thanks, John. Callum?
Thank you, Chair. Again, it was just really to touch on the issues that have been raised already, really in particular to thanking the staff with all the hard work that's gone on, particularly with guiding us through the process impeccably. It has been a marvellous news story, and I think coming out of COVID, this is the sort of thing our communities need, and the level of investment, I think, will really make a difference. So thanks again.
Yeah, thank you. I would agree with that. I think it will help with the economic recovery in terms of us coming through such a hard year. And again, like my fellow colleagues, I'd like to thank Fiona, Wendy and Willie, our ward manager, and all the other officers for all their work. This is a good news story, and it's really encouraging for our two islands today. So thank you all for that. And the work continues. As my colleague said, it's an annual pot of money. So we look forward to the next round of funding coming our way. So again, our heartfelt thanks to you all for all your hard work.
Thank you.
Thanks, Wendy. Thanks, Fiona.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, members, our next item on our agenda is the housing revenue account for garages. This one is quite a short paper, and I welcome Jenny Bruce, who's with us this morning. It's still morning, Jenny. Good morning, and thanks for joining us, and I'll just hand over to you.
Yeah, thank you very much for having us at this committee, because I appreciate it's not one we normally come to. It's regarding the garage rent accounts for 2021 to 2022. I appreciate that we already discussed at ward business meeting, but it's to ask if we can, the committee, to formally agree a 2% rent increase on our garages across Skye and Raasay. This, to be fair, in terms of actual funding coming into the council, it isn't a huge increase. We're talking 5 garages, and if they are occupied, if they're leased to current council housing tenants, it's an increase of 13 pence a week. And if it's non-council tenants, it's 16 pence a week, the difference being due to the charging of VAT to non-council tenants. So we are looking at putting the rents up for council tenants from £6.37 a week to £6.50 a week, and for non-council housing tenants from £7.87 a week up to £8.02 a week, changing our annual income in garages from £1,672.80 to £1,706.26. So it was just to ask the committee if they would kindly formalise their agreement for that 2% increase to be applied as of the new rent year.
Okay, Jenny, thanks for that. Has anyone got any questions or comments to make to Jenny, or are we quite happy to approve what is presented in front of us? Callum Monroe?
Just to thank Jenny for her report, and just say like we did at Board Business, I support this and I agree to this very small increase.
Thank you, Cal. Okay, members, agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Agreed. Thanks, Jenny.
Thank you very much. Thanks. Have a good morning.
And you, thanks. Okay, item 7 on our agenda is the roads maintenance programme for 2021-22, and we're joined by Andrew Hunter and Ian Moncrief, who are going to present the paper. Our roads engineer is off at the moment, so we're grateful to you both for being with us this morning. So I'll hand over to, is it Ian or Andrew or both of you?
Yes, just to say, you know, in Gordon's absence, I'm working on an interim basis as the road manager, and Andrew's going to present the actual capital budget, capital programme, and then we'll take any questions that you might have. So, Andrew,
Yep.
over to you.
Okay. Morning, councillors. Basically, as discussed, the programme is basically, as you can see on the agenda, schemes number 1 to 8 on the resurfacing are carried over from last year. Generally some single track roads, some of the B class at Lochslappin, quite a big lump in Portry Village, Home Farm Road, the Square, Wentworth Street, round by the Boswell Hotel and the corner of the Royal Bank. That we're hoping to have complete by the 26th of April, including all the lining. A small scheme at Calaray, and some surfacing at the Kayaking and Waterstein additional laybys. For this year, with the budget increase we've got, I've included a section on the 850 at Burnsdale, probably the first of a few sections to do there. There's a section at the Armadale Pier, and a section at Dewsdale around the hotel area. We've included the A863 at Ouse. It's quite a length there. It's in very poor condition. The plan is actually, when we're passing in the surface dressing preparation, to actually regulate that first and then go back and overlay it at a later date. And then we've got the 855 from Torvig Junction North. The road's really deteriorating there quite badly. A lot of overrun, a lot of single track just falling apart. So we're hoping to tackle 500 metres of that this year, and then follow on with some more next year. Tying in with the Home Farm Portry Village works, when we've got all the planing, surfacing gear and contractor in, it makes sense to catch a few schemes in Portry that are the same sort of style. So we're looking at the 87 roundabout and Dunvegan Road up to the Co-op and beyond the Co-op, up to almost the Leescurry Road junction. And we've got Mill Park in Portry. We've had quite a few complaints about it, and having a look at it myself, it's not in great condition at all. So a plane out and resurface there. And as we're on Home Farm Road, we'll catch York Drive in the passing, which has been in a bad shape for a few years. Then there's a section on the Prabas Tote Road, a small section in Borv Township, which is not a huge amount, but it's something towards it. But that'll continue through the years. To be confirmed, there's some surfacing we'll do in Razzie, and that'll tie in with the surface dressing that's proposed further down. There's a small section on the Pier Road at Broadford, near the trees, past the houses where it's quite bad, and then there's a section at Camas Cross from the single track bridge round the corner. The surface dressing, the bulk of it, there was no surface dressing carried out last year at all. So they've only a couple of additions to that is the Marashadder and Malagar Spur, which is tied into a development up there, where the developer, well, the contractor actually contributed to a surfacing scheme, and it needs to be surface dressed as well. And then there's a section from the Uig police station to the Idrigall junction where the road's quitting. It's not bad as such, but it just needs some attention, some patching, and surface dress it. And then the community trust have expressed an interest to replace the barrier, the fence, the barriers down at the pier on Quay Street, Keybray. So we've included an allocation for footpaths down there to redo the footpath before they put in any new barriers. And we've also included Stafford Road Portry drainage. That's to try and take the water away from the retaining wall that's needing repaired, to just tidy that up, and then at least that'll guarantee that the water won't affect the wall going forward, and it allows us to carry out the repairs with the wall being dry. And that's the programme for this year, hopefully.
Thank you, Andrew. We really appreciate your work with this report. I know our roads are a headache and a nightmare, and we're all frustrated, whether it's community members or councillors or yourselves as officers. I don't think there's anybody that is not frustrated by what is happening, and sometimes it's just devastating going on some of our roads. And despite what we're seeing, this is a good news story because it has captured a lot of the work that needs to be done across the island. And you know, like a lot of budgets in the council, we can't do everything, but certainly you know, when I read this report, I actually felt encouraged, despite being discouraged when I drive on the roads, even around Portry. So I want to say thanks for that, and we really look forward to a lot of this work being done, because just as I said, and I can't emphasize it enough, despite the frustrations, I really think this is a good report, and it's a good news story, or it should be a good news story. So if any members have questions or comments, just raise your hand. So I'll hand over to John Finlayson.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair, and thank you very much, Andrew and Ian. I think, as the Chair has said, that, you know, this is a good news story. We've got increased investment in our roads, and I think it's really important not to underestimate the angst that the communities at large feel about our roads. And it's not just in Skye. We know it's Highland wide, but we've got to focus on our roads here on Skye. I noticed that in terms of the revenue allocation, it says that we should expect about 1.1 million. I've got to say, I thought it might have been a bit more than that. Do we know when we're going to get confirmation of what our allocation is for this area? Because I think that's really important. Similarly, in terms of the capital budget allocation, again, to ask, is that our final allocation 1.07 million? I think Andrew's indicated that the work that didn't get carried on last year, and particularly in terms of surface dressing, is carried forward. So my assumption is that the funding for that is also carried forward. So I just want confirmation of that. Andrew, in terms of the additional 100k for the ward, and I think the report, well, I know the report says that that's been included in the capital works. It's really just to ask what flexibility is there around that, and where are we in terms of being responsive to problems that crop up, and community contacts us, contacts you, and there's a really, really difficult problem that's arisen, because we know how quickly roads can erode if it's very wet weather, etc. So how much flexibility have we got within that additional funding to be responsive and flexible in what we do? My other comment is round about the importance of getting the work done. It's an ambitious programme, and we're delighted to see that, but we want to ensure we get the work done. I think previously we've been a wee bit frustrated by the fact that sometimes the work doesn't get done because of the unavailability of particular plant or hot boxes or machinery, because we've got a dedicated slot. So the question is, how are we moving forward, making sure that we have some key resource in our area, so that when the weather is good, we've got the manpower, we can do it, as opposed to waiting for something coming from Inverness or elsewhere. And my last point is that we have the only council-owned quarry. We have our own tar plant in Skye. That should put us in a strong position to get the work done. We do know that income for the council is hugely important from the tar that they give to Breedens. And in the past, there have been frustrations that sometimes council work has not happened because Breedens are taking all their tar at a given time. Our roads are in such a state that we need a commitment that our roads are also going to get the attention, and waiting on Breedens to finish their work should not impact on the urgent work that we need to happen. As I say, these are not criticisms, these are questions that I think need answered. Like the chair said, I think we've got to be optimistic that we've got a very ambitious programme here. Our communities will be delighted to see that. But if these questions could also be supported and answered, I think that would give us all more confidence. And once again, I'd like to thank you both for your work and for your input, both today and on a regular basis. Thank you.
Thanks, John. You want?
Yeah, shall we answer those questions first, or do you want to take all the questions? And
yeah, if you just want to answer these first, and then I'll go to the two columns after.
Okay. Yes, Councillor Finlayson, I acknowledge the community's strength of feeling, and it is widespread across the whole of the Highland Council. In terms of the allocation for revenue and capital from the additional funding, the revenue position is there was 88k allocated under the additional revenue allocation, and in the capital there was 500k. So that gives you the extra funding. In terms of the carried forward funding, the budget or the programme was put together on the basis that the carry forward funding was unknown at that time. It still remains unknown, and we won't know for some time until the finances for the last year have been sorted out. That's a very prudent decision because it means that the programme, the schemes within the programme can be delivered with the funding that we've used. Had we included a notional carry forward funding, we may then have had to cancel some schemes or defer them. So as things stand, if we get extra cash, we may be able to do extra work. It is an ambitious programme. To be honest, it's the capital budget is just about double the baseline capital budget that we get year on year for Skye. I'll maybe let Andrew come into that, but I think the key thing is to start early and keep going, because with double the capital, we need to make an early start. Andrew, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, well, basically, we're working in the Fairy Glen at the moment, finishing off the surfacing up there for the new car parking areas. That should be, well, weather permitting. Hopefully this week or early next week. The plan then was to start actually attacking the pre-surface dressing, patching and the likes. So I think the first, because we're in Uig, we'll hit the Idrigal to the police station and get that patched and ready for surface dressing. The surface dressing, we're looking, there's 3 trains throughout the Highland Council area that will of the equipment. So we're following on from Lochaber. So I think the early indication is end of May, we'll be getting our surface dressing equipment. So that's my first target, is to try and get all the surface dressing preparation ready for then. 4 to 5 week programme of surface dressing, and then going forward have discussions and look to get on with the surfacing. But at the same time, when we're over in Razzie doing patching and the likes, and probably some small screed coat work on the road with the surfacing equipment, we'll do the resurfacing scheme on Razzie at the same time, rather than go back again later in the year. We'll do that. And the same with those, as we're passing those on surface dressing preparation, we'll do that first coat just to bring it back to a reasonable surface, and then we'll come back and do the overlay, the final coat later in the year. So we've got Portry Village is a main chunk of the programme, and I'm looking to get that complete by the end of April. Just need to get clarification from Breedens, and they'll be carrying out the work for us, because we were not equipped to plane and surface in an urban area like that. So Breeden will be doing that, and then hopefully have a lining contractor in before the end of April as well, to get all the traffic orders back in and lined, and some other additional lining that's needing done as well. But it's just a case of program it and just hit it hard and get the guys. But we've got to bear in mind with Quarry and Breeden, but I'm sure we can work together and get through. Breeden is a lot of night work, where the night work will not have as big an impact on us during the day. So it's the only issue there we have is that sometimes we'll be short of transport for vehicles because they'll be on night shift with Breeden, but we should be able to overcome that quite quickly. But,
Andrew, do you want to take John's question about the 100k for the ward and the flexibility?
Yeah, well, I built that in to start with. We had discussions at ward business last week regarding the 100k. But should you have any other schemes that you feel need to come in, then we can always look at rejuggling the programme and defer something to next year. But hopefully there is additional money for strategic capital schemes, and hopefully we might get some of that, which might add some extra to it. So all being well, we can accommodate any other needs and any emergency works that come around. So I've been quite generous in our estimates to keep it reasonable, so there is a degree of flexibility built into it.
Thank you. That's excellent, Andrew. John, do you want to come back in?
Yeah, thank you, and thank you both for that. Just to say, Ian, my understanding is that the carry forward funding, I'm sure we were told that would be carried forward. So I think it's really important that we don't lose money from our area that was earmarked for work, and that carry forward happens. So it'd be good to get that as soon as possible. Andrew, in terms of the surface dressing programme, and I think it's a point I've raised, if we have 3 weeks of rain when we've got the machinery or the train for the surface dressing programme, does that mean we lose it because the weather has impacted, or can we surface dress in any weather? And the last one is, Andrew, I think Brendan and Donnie are aware of some work that was going to be done on the Torren Road in terms of flooding and ditching round about that corner. So I think that has been promised to that community and the residents there. So just to ask if you could follow that one up for me, please.
Yeah, the surface dressing, when it rains, we can't work. It's as simple as that. But we're second on the list. Loch Aber are before us, so whoever follows us. But we'll have to wait until we complete our programme, unless and then if not, there'd have to be an agreement. But with 3 trains running in the whole of the Highlands, there is a bit of flexibility there. If somebody's running particularly late, say we were running late, and whoever was behind us on the list, they could possibly pull the train from the other areas. But it really depends. It's so weather dependent, surface dressing. But the bulk of it is actually in the preparation. Once you're actually surface dressing, it can happen quite quickly. If you get a good spell of weather and no breakdowns, you can really fly through surface dressing quite quickly.
Just to come back, Councillor Finlayson, on the carry forward budget, I note that in the paper that went to the Economy and Infrastructure Committee on the 4th of February, Road Investment Budget Distribution Capital Report, I think it was section 5.2 did note that the current underspend on capital is to be rolled forward. Now, I'm not, obviously, as I'm just managing Skye on an interim basis, I'm not aware of the budget position, but I can say that in Ross and Cromarty, my revenue budget is balanced from my capital, and certain elements of patching, the ones that are structural, are capitalised. So until we know what decisions have been taken by the finance manager, usually at the end of the financial year, beginning of the next year. We don't know the exact figure. But by not including a notional figure, it means that Andrew can add to the programme rather than cut it short.
Okay, thanks, Ian. And my last question about the plant and resource for the area, I think that'll be my last question about you. Are there moves to make sure that we get some additional plant based in Skye, some core, we're not asking for everything, some core material, so that when the workforce are available and the weather's good and we've got a full squad, we can get out there and hit things and not be waiting on equipment coming to the island?
Yes, yeah. Currently, all the areas are reviewing what fleet and plant requirements they have. Within the additional funding package that's become available, there's £500,000 allocated to fleet replacement this coming financial year, 21-22, and a similar amount for the following financial year. I believe we're trialling hot boxes and patchers in Inverness and Wick. We need to balance what plant and labour we have, because it's expensive to have a whole load of kit sitting idle because we can't crew it. As we've seen in recent years, there's a move to have more multiple use plant, such as the Karcher, which can plane, it can cut verges, it's got a snow blower attachment. It can be hired very quickly from the Dingwall depot where it's based, and it means that it's you get much more flexibility. And I think the key thing here is flexibility. We need to have the right people with the right kit in the right location at the right time, and it's but by having all the kit sitting in the one place, that might not be the best solution. The other issue is that we could hire in extra drivers, extra manpower, but that also impacts on the Skye revenue budget. So it is this eternal balance between plant, labour and resources. But I've got a lot of faith in Andrew and in Donny to manage Skye's position until Gordon can return on a full-time basis.
Thank you for that, Ian. Alan Munro.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Andrew and Ian, for the report and for speaking to it. I think, Ian, it's good to hear, this discussion on investing in plant and equipment. I mean, this is good news. There's £1 million in capital, $1 million plus in revenue. So the money is there. It's getting the right resource, like you say, in the right place at the right time. But as Councillor Finlayson said this morning when we met, we have to spend this money. We don't want to end the year with any money unspent. So we have the resource. We need to spend it and maximise its impact. Looking at the list, I think it's just important to realise that there's a large number of asterisked items there. This time last year, absolutely everything shut down. Nothing was happening in terms, if it wasn't life or death, people were not at work. People were shielding. Now, if it had been a normal year, we'd have carried on. We'd have got through much of that list. So I just think we've got to realise that this time last year, the country was in a really state of shutdown, and we didn't know what was ahead. So we have to get to it this year. Ian, I liked what you said about getting momentum up. Is a starting early, keeping it going. I think we need to just get going. At the same time, our staff have been conscientiously gritting our roads all winter. And Skye, it was probably the end of February before they ceased the regular gritting. I think we've been out a handful of times in March, possibly. But I just think we've got a dedicated staff who've served us well over the winter. And I think we must acknowledge that. And when staff are gritting, they certainly can't be patching or dressing. So saying that, all of us here as elected members have communication on the phone, emails, we attend community councils, and we are at the sharp end of complaints and potholes and so on. So we fully understand the challenge ahead. Andrew, you mentioned Raasay, really important, necessary improvements. Portry too, capital of Skye, needs that work. So that's great. And you're talking about April for getting some of that complete. So that's great. Dunvegan area, real issues up there with potholes and so on. So we really need to help these communities. But I just want to, I suppose, reassure you, Andrew and Ian too, that we're supporting you. We want you to maximise everything you have in terms of resource and staff in the months ahead. I was just looking at the diary there. We have a area committee at the end of August, 5 months away. I think it'd be great to bring a paper and just say, look, we've achieved this, for ourselves, but for our communities. So thank you. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Callum.
Yes, just to come back, Councillor Munro. I mean, I'm sure Gordon will be able to bring back a progress report to the Skye Committee in August.
Thanks, Ian. Councillor MacLeod.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think all the points really have been touched on there. I think it's heartening to see, all these various places around the world with this ambitious report, being touched on, because it has been a tough winter, and I think we all recognise that on the roads. And I think it's fair to say it's comprehensive. So yeah, I mean, areas like Ski Bost and all the other areas that's been mentioned as well, it's good to see them on the list. And just thank you, Ian and Andrew. I know it's a tough job. Thanks.
Thanks, Callum. I know obviously manpower is an issue, but I suppose one of the big issues too is drainage. I know that's an issue that Razzie continually flag up, is the water going on to the roads, and again it mentions in the Port Stafford Road, because that's another area. But again, I'm just flagging up drainage because that is an issue across the whole ward probably. And I can't talk about roads without mentioning white lining. It just seems to be an ongoing issue in certain places, and I know I bring it up at a lot of meetings in terms of roads. But it would be great, even before things open up, particularly around Carbis, because they have flagged things up for a very long time, particularly the junction just at the top of Carbis, where the Free Church is before you go down into Carbis itself. I don't know if there's any white line left there. It's just an issue. And of course, if Portry's getting done, hopefully white lining will be done at the bottom of Stormy Hill, because there's not much white lining left. And I know we had a discussion recently with Malcolm MacLeod about that new pothole machine, the JCB pothole machine that was invented, I think, when the Chancellor put 2.5 billion into potholes. So his plan was that 50 million potholes would be filled in by 2025, and I think then JCB came up with this new machine. I don't know if there's been any looks at that in terms of the Highland Council and whether it's worth the money that it probably would cost, or I don't know if there's any thoughts about that, Ian or Andrew.
Just to maybe come back to you, Councillor Gordon. I'm sure that we can include all the white lining that needs to be done as part of the surface dressing lining programme, and I'm sure Andrew can pick that issue up. I believe that the JCB pothole machine might be the one which has been trialled up in Wick just now. Okay. I haven't seen it myself. I have heard about it and read about it, but I haven't seen it in operation. It's, as I said earlier, it's always a balance. You've got a machine which is probably not cheap versus how efficient it is compared to the more traditional ways of filling in potholes, and also you've also got to look at the long-term efficiency of some of these machines. The jet patcher is back on Skye from next week for, I believe it's 6 weeks. The jet patcher is a very efficient machine for filling in potholes, but it's more of a it's classed as a 5-year temporary fix. I believe that the JCB pothole machine is not just filling in the hole, but taking the material out and then doing more of a permanent repair. But I've yet to see it in operation.
Okay, thanks. Any other questions or comments? No.
The only thing I would say about the surface dressing program and white lining and the surfacing is when I did the estimates and all these schemes, I included white lining in every one of them.
Oh, excellent.
So that's actually built into the budget. So when we finish a surfacing job, the money is allocated in that scheme to do the white lining.
Thanks. Well done. That's excellent news. Thank you. Well, thanks again to you both, Andrew and Ian, for presenting today and for Andrew pulling this report together. I mean, I think when we all read it and spoke about it at our business, we were all really encouraged by it and felt that it gave us a bit of hope despite the roads and what we face. And I said to Ian this morning, and I'm sure I said to Andrew too, that sometimes your jobs are unimaginable in terms of dealing with the amount of councillors that you have to deal with, plus the communities as well. And like my colleagues, you know, we as councillors on the island support you in your roles and the work you do, because we know how tough things are and how tough budgets are. But yeah, it's a good news story for us today. So thank you both for your work.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Cheers.
Bye.
Okay, so we're on to our last item of the area committee, item number 8, which is the Ward 10 discretionary grants awards for 2020 to 2021, and our ward manager William McKinnon is going to do a verbal presentation.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just ask the clerk if you can pull up the list of grants that were awarded this year, so you can see them on the screen. If you could do that, Alistair, please.
Yeah, just bear with me. I'll see if I can get it.
Sorry, Alistair. Thanks.
Okay.
Thanks, Alistair. As you'll see from the list, there's been 56 community resilience applications awarded from the COVID fund, which is what's on page 1 that's showing up at the moment, and 10 from the ward discretionary fund, which is on page 2, which you'll see in a couple of minutes. That gives a total of 66 grant awards over the financial year to 35.
Willie, we're not seeing anything on the screen. I don't know if we're meant to be.
Yeah, sorry, Chair. I'm just looking for it now. Hold on. Here we go. Hold on.
That's it.
Can you see it now?
Yeah.
Do you want me to go back to the beginning again?
Yeah, that's fine, Willie. Yep.
So yeah, as you'll see now on the screen, there's been 56 community resilience applications awarded from the COVID fund. That's what's on page 1, and 10 from the ward discretionary fund, which is on page 2, giving a total of 66 grant awards to 35 different community groups and 1 council project, which was the public toilets in Broadford. An emergency repair was required to get them open earlier in the year, totaling £52,000 worth of money that was awarded. That was the full budget available during 2020-21. The awards have focused mainly on supporting community groups who have provided a wide range of services during the ongoing pandemic to help those who have been most in need, including providing food parcels to community food banks, food share projects, hot meals, growing fresh vegetables and salads to supplement the food parcels, vouchers for supermarkets, butchers, local stores, winter fuel, collecting shopping and prescriptions, providing clothing for young people, PPE for key workers and vulnerable people, outdoor projects and activities for young people and families, online activities, online and telephone counselling services, play park equipment and village environmental improvements. If there's any questions or comments that members have on the grants that were awarded during the financial year, I'd be happy to take those now. Thank you.
Thanks, Willie. John, do you want to come in?
Yeah, thank you, and thank you, Willie, for this report. And I think we've got to acknowledge the resilience shown by our communities over this last year, but also the fact that we as members and the council have been able to support these communities in the tremendous work that we've been doing. And I think if you look at the list of people who have received money from the Ward Discretionary Fund, it articulates how important community resilience has been and how we've been able to support them. For example, if you look at local community councils, there are a number of them. We've also got the blood bank motorbikes, we've got rag and tag. So it's a wide group of people that we've been able to support. And certainly when we've had a look council-wide at the areas and how funding has been distributed, I think it's only fair to say that our ward has come out on tops with the number of awards we've given, and also how quickly we made that funding available. And at the same time, with our ward discretionary, which is a measly 16 grand, we were still able to give a number of groups support. And I think this emphasises the point that I've been making for some time. Localism needs to be backed up with budget, disaggregated budget of the types that we received in this last year, because the difference we can make to local communities, because we know the local groups and we know what they're doing, I think is something that we really have to reflect on. I'd also like to personally thank you, Willie, for keeping us right in terms of accounting. And all I can say is well done to everyone, and hopefully we can continue to support the communities the way we have over the last year.
Thanks, John. Callum Munro and then Callum MacLeod.
Thanks, Chair. I think firstly just to acknowledge our ward manager's contribution to this last year and to these awards. Willie, thank you for all your work. As John Finlayson said, the number of awards this ward managed to distribute and the speed with which we dealt with them we did it really effectively, I feel, and I think these awards were put to good use to develop resilience within our communities. Just thinking back just for a moment, this time last year, in the first 3 months of COVID, was an extremely anxious and uncertain time. It's hard to you have to really think back, but we didn't know what we were dealing with. We didn't know what was ahead. And just thinking how we felt at the time, as we saw communities respond and groups just created from nothing, and also trusts and local groups already established reacting. To be honest, I feel it was quite a humbling experience to be in the position we were in, seeing this response and being able to award them. So I just think we really must be grateful for our communities, but just also that we were able, that we had this money, we had this funding which we could distribute. So well done our communities, well done our officers, and thank you all. Thank you, Willie.
Thanks, Callum. Councillor MacLeod.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's been articulated really well. And again, I'd like to convey my gratitude as well to our ward manager, Willie. I think he's excelled in guiding us through, which I don't think it can be stressed enough, really, how this has offered hope and a ray of light during a very difficult time. And the level of response offered for support in the community, as Callum said, has really been humbling, and just gratitude to be conveyed throughout. Thank you.
Thanks, Callum. Yeah, I would completely agree. I think these funds, maybe some of them small pots of money, but they made a huge difference to the community groups and the communities that were awarded them. And it is quite humbling looking back and just seeing how people rose up and organised themselves in either townships or community groups like Skye Community Response and other trusts and community councils, and just the individuals in our locality, just how they made a difference so that nobody was in need, and there was just so many different avenues for help for people, which I think was really important. It's quite humbling that people wanted to help and make a difference in their locality. So yeah, I would like to add my thanks to Willie as well. I think, you know, you do a pile of work continually, and what you do does not go unnoticed by us and our communities. So we want to just say thank you for all your work and help, not only with this, but just everything that you do, particularly over this last year, because we all know it's been quite a challenge, and the council has still worked maybe harder than ever in terms of some of the services and the help that was on offer. So a big thank you. Thank you. Well, I think that's the end of the area committee. 12:30. So thanks to everybody for their input this morning, and also to all the officers and everybody that took part. So thanks.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you.